7:02, so I'm going to call the East Lyme Board of Education special meeting. Call that to order. If everyone can rise for the pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So the first agenda item is the discussion and action of the proposed adoption of the budget for fiscal year 2022-23. Opening it up for discussion. Start. Thoughts? Go ahead.
I've got like 5 or 6 questions on the budget, but I don't want to dominate the conversation if others have things to say.
Maybe cover a couple, then we'll open it up and then come back. Does that work?
I'll do whatever you want.
Yeah, why don't we do that?
Two of them, the first thing that struck me about the budget is I went back and I like to read budgets because they basically tell the story of an organization. I went back and looked at the past budget we've had and compared it with this budget. And it was remarkable to me how similar the story is to past budgets. And that was interesting to me because the context of the world has changed so much since the budget for the past few years that I was kind of thinking that we have the opportunity maybe to use the budget as a lever to launch us into some type of programming or reflections of the brand new reality that we're facing, you know, in a world right now with the anything from the pandemic to the changes that we're facing on so many other social dimensions. And I say that simply because when we hit the pandemic last time, the model we were using for our helping kids learn did not fit the structure we had to use for the pandemic. And I think that as I look at the story the budget is telling, I'd like to think that we can think of a story that is going to position the district in a way that's going to prepare students to work in a type of environment and setting where they're going to be self-initiating and self-sustaining their own learning using educational resources, you know, to the best capability. So that was kind of one thing about the budget, that it's like the story is the same over the past several years. Second question, I was looking at the budget assumption and I saw that, I think this is on page 6 or so. You're using the budget assumption from November, the 6.8 budget assumption for inflation. Question is like, has that altered it all? Going forward, are you going to stick with the 6.8% as the basic budget assumption, or what are your thoughts about in terms of the budget construction to reflect possible changes in the rates of inflation?
So that that slide that you're referring to, it was as of November, and it's just providing a point of reference to explain that at this point, you know, our budget has increased due to not only things, part of it has been inflationary. I think some of the departments have only put in 5%. I think the point we were trying to make there is as of November, it's 6.8. And I think January, when I looked, was 7.5% from the last January to this January. So it's not an assumption that was made. It was just kind of a information provided to let you know that costs are rising kind of across the board with things.
Because any budget is based upon certain sets of assumptions. About
Correct.
inflation, so I just want
Right.
to get a perspective on
Yep.
So you have basically understood that it is moving up from 6.8 to 7.5.
Correct. Yeah.
And that may have some impact on the budget issues going forward.
The 7 point, well, we would have to, depending on where the inflation, where it occurs. So for example, we use supplies as an example. So as we move forward, we have budgeted in 611 what we have budgeted. So if costs increase, we either need to look at other maybe items that we can transfer from, or we might have to reduce some of the spending in those line items. I can't answer those questions right now. You know, I can't predict the future, but that's what would happen. That's with any budget. We're putting a budget together in November for starting in July. So we don't have a crystal ball. So I think what happens as we do every single year, and as we brought forward to the board, budget transfers, those things, you know, we need to evaluate and maybe,
So
Right.
basically, you're gonna try to stick with that line, even if the budget, even if the assumptions about inflation change.
We'll stick with the line, but we might need to make adjustments.
correct,
So you're
And
gonna make
Correct.
adjustments within the line.
right.
Or between transfers, or
Right.
between,
Transfers within the budget. But
Yeah.
the,
Exactly.
It's
Yeah.
not going to be, going back to say the budget, our budget assumption for inflation went up by 3%, so we're gonna need another budget increase by 3%.
We
No,
would,
you're basically
not
gonna
not after
stick
it's
with
adopted,
it.
no.
No,
You
once it's
can't.
adopted.
When
adopted,
it's
that's,
adopted, you're gonna stick with that.
you have,
even
you
though-
have, we are
even if the-
statutorily
the budget
required to,
Assumption for the inflation change.
right? Well, we're bound by
Okay.
we're statutorily required to
Okay,
be
good,
within
good.
that budget.
That
We
was
don't
my
have
question.
a choice
Thank you.
really. Okay.
We're gonna stop there.
Thanks, Mary. Lee?
Yeah, so we heard a lot of feedback tonight around class sizes and specifically the rising third grade cohort at Flanders. I'm curious, I know we've kind of been looking at class sizes for a little while now. Are there any other class sizes like across our district at the elementary school level right now that are very close to hitting the top of the range as well? I just want to have like the bird's eye view.
yeah, that's a good question. Yes, I think I mentioned that one of our previous meetings, we have to watch Nyack Center. The Nyack Center's first and second grade numbers are of the pressure as well. We're sitting at 121 respectively. So we're watching kindergarten as well, because right now our kindergarten numbers are projecting on the lower side. And we've got a set number of teachers in there. So there is potentially that flexibility to move a kindergarten teacher. That's what we talked about at the Flanders third grade, potentially moving a kindergarten teacher at Lily B up. And that saves, we kept the teacher at Flanders sort of thing. So we
And
didn't
are those
add.
projections based on current enrollment right now, or based on what we had what is that number?
Next
come
year's
from?
projections?
Yeah,
Based on what we know for family kindergarten, for instance, families that have started the registration process. We know an exact number of how many have already completed their packets and those that are in process. So we have the exact numbers as of today. For kindergarten. So I'm happy to share those if anybody wants to know what those numbers are too.
I did.
Yeah, I can tell you exactly. So Nyack Center, right now, there's slated to be 3 teachers and total, this is parents that have completed the process as well as those that are in process. Class sizes would be 7.7 students with 3 teachers. That's as of right now. Lily B. Haynes, same thing, 11.8
With 3 teachers.
with 4 teachers. Back at Lydia, we have 4 teachers this year. And we were planning for next year or to move one up, about 11.8. And then at Flanders, 3 teachers and all of said and done as of right now, enrollment 16 in a class at Flanders. So there's more Flanders parents have already registered, obviously, than some of the other 2 schools. But that's what
there's
we're
no
looking at.
deadline to register though, so.
No, we
should
could
be
see.
anticipating that these are gonna hit.
Exactly, that's what we have to, yeah. And if we do some comparisons to years past, that we're a little bit less, I believe, than where we've been in years past with where those numbers are. So, but we just don't know. You're right. I mean, we had, what was it, 4 years ago, remember we had Flanders Kindergarten, we had to add, so we had 5 teachers at the kindergarten level, and we had to do that over the summer. See, it's a wild card. You don't know. So, yeah. So that's where we're at though right now. Candace has got her hand up.
Thank you. You just can't see me. It's
I'm
okay. I
trying-
know I'm to the
I'll move it
left.
back.
It's okay.
I'm also trying to see if Kate.
No
Laura
worries.
on screen.
No worries. So we find ourselves here every single year. And those numbers, we watch them until the day and even after the day school starts, because not just people are maybe a little laxed on registering. I think that we have created a streamlined system that can give us a better projection now than we've had in past years, but we have a huge rental population here. So it changes on top of the growth that we have seen. So I'll just name out Rocky Neck Village is all students that are going to be coming in. We will have to flex to accommodate and to ensure that all students are getting equitable education, and that most importantly, those guidelines are noted, right? So when each one of you came in, I literally saw myself, because in 2012, I was you. And I came here to advocate at that time for Lily B. Hayes. And at that time, inequity was very real. When one class may have 11 students and another class had 20. So there is no doubt that this community has people on this board that put a lot of effort and constant focus on the class sizes, recognizing what's important. So I want you to know that, okay? The guidelines that we put in place was brought forward by me and some members that are still here on this board that supported it. And there was a reason for it. It was to ensure that you're constantly being cognizant of what's important here. We value small class sizes. So I did ask Jeff to speak to the third grade teacher, because we did address it at the last meeting, listening to our community, right? So if you could maybe reiterate where we're at with that, I think it would be beneficial for our visitors.
Yeah, so what we did there, we have 4 this year. We were dropping it to 3, which is leaving that number up around that 20, 0.5. And we were sending a teacher over to Lily B. And I'll talk about Lily B. I'm glad you brought that up, Candace, too, just a little bit after this. But we were looking at the kindergarten numbers, we felt as a board, when we talked about it'd be much easier to add a K if necessary. And we were going to put that on hold and be able to move a K up to a grade level in Lily B that required it to keep those numbers low. I think it was 3rd grade at Lily B. And hence keeping a teacher at Flanders, which left it at 4, which left the 3rd grade class size at 15.5. The reason, again, just to reiterate out, and I think everybody realizes and knows this, Lily B. Haynes, we've had discussions each year, and I've heard from Lily B. staff members, administration. It's a much different world there than the other 2 elementary schools with the specialty programs. You've got upwards of 80 students that require significant needs across the board for various reasons of disability. And those students are all within those classrooms across Lily B as well. So, something that if we wanted to in the future look at, do we split those out? Because there are some students that are slated or supposed to be in the district of Nyack Center or Flanders, but they go to the specialty programs. So we could split that all apart, but that's going to cause more staff needed at programs at the 3 schools versus keeping them all at 1.
I don't know what you mean, Joe.
So if a
sorry to
student in
interrupt.
Nyack Center, for instance, let's say a student in Nyack Center has a disability of sorts and requires support. that student doesn't go to Nyack Center, goes to Lily B because that's where the support service is that supports that disability for the child.
So how are you gonna what are you gonna do, separate them out?
I'm just saying that's, we don't want to do that right now. But it's
Okay.
something that, if those numbers continue to grow, that's something, might have to look at, but we need to support the classes and the regular ed classes at Lily B with lower class sizes because those teachers, there's an inequity there. Those
Oh, it's hard.
teachers are trying, they're going to more PPT meetings, they're going, it's a lot of extra duty on them versus the teachers at Flanders and Nyack Center. So
Can I
that's
say-
what we're trying to be cognizant of.
Can I say this is an excellent, as a previous Lily B. Haynes parent, I thank you for identifying that. Because it was often part of the challenge, as you and I just talked about earlier, part of the challenge of, you had a certain number, but then you also had the special needs children coming into the classroom, which really demanded more from the students and the teacher and the staff. So thank you for acknowledging that. Your first administrator, I've heard acknowledge that.
Well, I'm gonna turn it right back to Melissa Di Loretto though, and the staff at Lily B, because they're the ones that were really
Oh, they do,
advocating. Yeah, they should be thanked, because they.
Oh, no, but I'm just saying, okay, thank you.
Yeah, they advocated for that, and we saw that, need. We've been watching that closely in the
It's
last couple
hard.
of years.
So I just want to add more
It's-
to
it's-
that.
yeah.
So I just wanted to also add to that through the years, as class sizes have gone up, usually gone up, because that's where it's going to continue to go. We will continue to grow. I am certain of it. Our population is growing, people are moving here more, there is more growth. We will continue to have this challenge. And that's why we put guidelines in place to always bring us back to what's important. So with the Flanders school, we did have to add a few years ago and to another class where we did add helpers and another teacher. So knowing that, I foresee that we will possibly have to do those things to ensure that all students are getting equitable services.
Leah, can I get back to a question that you had asked? Because I think, were you asking, are there any current classes that are at that size? 'Cause we have,
Honestly, both is helpful,
okay.
current and projected.
we do, there are all fourth grades at Lily B right now are at 23. They started at 18 or 19, but because of the new development that was
Yeah.
established, we had an influx of students that we were not anticipating. And we suspect we'll have a little bit more of that over the summer, next summer as well.
And the
Um,
thought there too was the possibility, and I think that we're talking about the Rocky Neck, right? Because Rocky Neck goes to LBH and the possibility of rerouting. I know
Yes.
that had
Yes, I
been
remember
talked
that
about
discussion.
too, which we had even brought up many years ago before we even redistricted, because this is a consistent challenge here that we are inevitable, and this is what we are challenged with. So we will always do the right thing. At least that's how I feel, or as long as I'm here. And we put guidelines in place to ensure that we do that.
I'm not fully optimistic that we are going to be in a place where we are able to kind of reallocate teachers, for lack of a better term. I mean, if Flanders K is already at 16 per class.
Yep.
Our guidelines are not to exceed 18 there. It is gonna be March 1st. There's gonna be more than 6 new enrollments
For sure.
by the time school starts. I'm not optimistic that keeping that potential solution in our back pocket is gonna solve this situation.
Just keep in mind, some of those 16, aren't fully registered. They started the process, but a parent too could decide, you know what, it's just not gonna work for me next year. I want to just keep my child out. But they've started the process. I just want to make sure we're clear with not all of those. Many have not finished or come close to complete the process. They just started.
And it's so dependent
Can-
too, right? Like how many different things where everybody's being challenged with, parents, as far as whether or not they're going to send their children to school or not, having a pandemic, having all of these different situational things that are coming up, the decisions are kind of last.
I just wanted to kind of put a little framework. I unfortunately, I didn't get to hear some of the comments, but I'm someone who is also with Candace and, making sure that we have reasonable class sizes. I just wanted to remind folks that a while back, this district was considering a single elementary school. And with a single elementary school, equal class sizes would have been simple. However, there's a trade-off for that. There's a trade-off for having every single class size be the same. And that you're in this giant building and kids don't have the community feel and the thing that comes with the neighborhood schools that we decided to keep. So it's, I think, extremely challenging with the fact that we have rental properties and developments coming in and people registering, at the last minute to try to make those numbers jive just perfect. And with, 3 teachers, it either jumps from being a really small class to a really big class if you move one person around. So I want to remind folks that we are cognizant of the fact that we want it to be equal, but it is very, very challenging to do that job. And we're living with some inequities because we think that having the smaller school is a large benefit as well, and keeping those 3 schools. Now, the other difficult thing that people don't like, to make it equitable, you got to redistrict people more often, and that's another challenge that we have. Now, I don't know whether, there needs to be a discussion about other possible solutions to balance the ebb and flow of our community to try to make the numbers work a little better, other than, just the teacher part of it. It's like, is there a way to get the community to be part of that solution in terms of handling that ebb and flow? And, do you want your kid to move as they go from school to school? Year to year, move from school to school to keep the numbers down, or do you want to keep your kid in the same school? And it's difficult to have it all with a 3-school system with the community that we have. But I don't want to see big class sizes, but it's not an easy solution. I just want to kind of, for those folks who maybe not were around when we were deciding to keep our 3 schools, and which was something that I personally was very much in favor of, because I think the opportunities that are gained from having the smaller communities maybe outweigh the perfectly even class sizes across the board.
And a caveat to that, we were in direct contact with Rocky Neck Village, the manager of the complex. We talked, we've got kind of you call us if you see more kids that are coming in, really, and to that degree. And also North Brybrook, there's going to be some building going on, it looks like at North Brybrook as well. So we really have to be looking at, there could be some small pots of redistricting that, we just shift some kids over to Natick Center.
Yep.
So.
Thanks, Bill. Let me just check online. Laura or Kate? Do you have any comments? Upside down, Laura? Okay.
I have no idea. So that happens in your travel, you end up upside down. No, I don't. I'm just impressed with the parents' input into this process, and the thoughtfulness of the people who have, kept in mind the needs of our children, our families, our communities. And I have nothing more to add to what you've said, other than I appreciate everything you said. So thank you.
Great, thanks, Laura. And Kate, do you have anything?
Well, I think it's always about educational outcomes and providing for our students and our teachers and our administration to the best of our ability, and trying to provide for the best educational outcomes. And that being said, I know I've lived in places where there was either a K-1 combination or a 1-2 combination, sometimes a 3-4. And teachers not only liked that and enjoyed it, and it was great as far as the educational outcomes for the students. So I guess I think sometimes thinking flexibly around different topics might help to solve or offer solutions that we haven't necessarily thought about or talked about. But of course, it's always about doing what's best for kids and giving our faculty again and our families, and especially, of course, the students. It's always about the students, giving them the best opportunities that we can provide for them. But, it's the budget too. It's always about money and keeping our mill rate down and keeping our Board of Finance and Board of Selectmen happy too. So it's a tight, thin, narrow road or path to walk, a tight rope to walk. So it's not easy.
Great, thanks, Kate. We'll go back to Barry. Do you want to?
First,
Lisa, did you?
no. Very good comment, class size. Back to my opening comment about continually telling the same story. If we continually tell the same story about how our classrooms are set up, we're going to continually have this problem with class size. There are districts and places I'm working with in the country where this issue of class size, as we're talking about it right now, is a non-starter. You can design a different story for how learning happens within schools, whereas the topic of the class size becomes a non-issue. I'll just I'll say more about that another time. It's just, we're not stuck with this if we want to tell a different story. I'm trying to go through the budget and I read this carefully and I just got really, I want to make sure I understand something here. I could begin on page 6.
Page 6, Mary,
Page 6.
which tab? Where are you?
Yeah, of the one section, I'm trying to, I know there are many different iterations out there, so I tried to stick in with the one that you were presenting tonight,
Oh, the slides.
the
Okay.
slide you were presenting tonight.
Okay, so here's on page 6.
All right. I gave you mine,
But
so I'm gonna just follow along with somebody else.
over here.
Is there more copy? Oh, okay, thanks. Oh, there we go. There's a couple extra. All right, perfect.
it is simply a function of technology. I didn't bring my charging cord here, so I had my screen up at maximal brightness and I basically ran the battery out. So,
Gotcha.
uh,
Major budget drivers. Right?
Okay,
Right.
Budget drivers, yeah.
Yeah. Under the first column under salaries, the last bullet. The phrase some staff salaries budgeted using ARP grant. So I'm trying to understand that phrase. Let me just, so I think that means that if you go back to slide 5,
4.
you go back to the previous page.
Yeah.
So some staff budgeted using ARP grant are the staff listed on page 5.
Yep, there's where 4 and 5 tie in. Exactly.
Okay, right, so the some staff are the page 5. So if I go back to page 4, that means that the high school MTSS intervention teachers, the FTE secondary 504 MTSS pathway coordinator, and the 0.5 FTA coastal connection administrator are gone.
Some are gone and others are not. The MTSS intervention teachers, it's in earlier slides in the deck that we presented on January 10th. They're in the operating budget.
Okay, they're in.
There, yes, but not the pathways coordinator has been reduced. That's a part-time position next year. So anything that's,
So that was the 1.0 FTE has been reduced.
yes,
What about the 0.5 coastal connection administrator?
that is gone. So there's we have a point, yeah, we have a 0.5, but we've reduced, so we have a 0.5 at coastal and we have a 0.5 at pathways.
Now, as I look at those, I remember the board presentation recently where they came up and talked about that. And particularly coastal connections, they were talking about the growth in the apprenticeship programs that they had set up. And they had a very elegant outcome-oriented rubric, for lack of a better term. I'm going to borrow what Angelisa used, the term agency. They used the term, they were developing a really powerful set of professional skills in these students. And it just seemed like such a great program. And back to the second slide, where we're talking about priorities for the district. There was a priority in terms of the special needs students. And the other thing that struck me on this was that I think I was going to call Jeff and Natalie, so I told them about my participation in the Governor's Workforce Development Council, the Workforce Council at the state level. One of the things that came through consistently from the CEOs, these are like CEOs of Electric Goat, Hartford Healthcare, Yale New Haven Hospital, the hubs for technology programs. One of the things that came through very strongly was when they were talking about the type of skilled worker that they would like to hire. They were talking in terms of professional skills. They said that too often what we're getting is a student who can do A, B, and C, and D, as long as somebody's standing over their shoulder telling them to do A, B, C, and D. But if E comes in as a contingency, they throw up their hands and they wait for somebody to tell them what to do with E. So that falls back to their charge to schools, K through 12 schools and the community colleges also, was to spend more efforts on developing a sense of professional skills. They kept talking about it. And just as a caveat, another interesting, they talked to the head of the technology hub for development of the state, talked about how 80% of the students that he is hiring do not have a diploma or a degree. Because there are programs through Apple, Google, Microsoft that are preparing these students better for the particular skills that they need in this industry than the current education system is. So that's like a shot across the bow, that there's an emerging system out there that we have to begin to be prepared to work with and learn from in terms of what capabilities they are developing. So anyway, this all goes back to the program that the Coastal Connection is doing. It's so elegant and so robust. I can't understand like why we are not maintaining this this very solid program that got off to such a great start and has such great value for our students. And we're cutting this position, and my related question to this is I tried to go through the budget, figuring out if there are any non-instructional costs that we were cutting from last year to this year in the budget. Because if we are maintaining in our budget non-instructional costs and yet cutting a very, very valuable instructional cost in the Coastal Connections program, I think we have to very carefully look back at the budget. So that's.
Barry, I think maybe if we could take a second, I don't know if Jeff, you want to address, because I think so. I
Yeah,
think
just
get
to
the facts
be,
correct.
yeah, but just to be clear, we didn't cut it. So the coastal program used to be a 0.5 and we had no pathways at all going on. At the high school, there's no pathways coordinator. We used the ARP funds to add in the pathways, the 1.0 pathways coordinator. Now, the only thing we've done now is we backed it down. So it's a 0.5. So the pathways is still in place, but it's a 0.5. It's no longer a 1.0. We got it going with a robust, aggressive approach using the ARP funds. And now we've backed it down to a 0.5 administrative position rather than a 1.0. That's only, okay, that's all I just, yeah.
But we
You can
haven't cut,
understand my point.
but we haven't cut coastal.
No. Coastal's
I
a
mean,
point.
Right.
We have,
It's all relative. I mean, in the sense of you're saying, we didn't cut it because it was a grant funded program. Going back to what it was before.
No, there was no pathways before. We put in a 1.0, now we just back the 1.0 down to 0.5. And, with all the grant funding that supposedly is potentially coming from the state, I think that's something that we should be looking at too down the road, because that money helped offset staffing and program increases as well, rather than our operating budget doing so.
I understand that, but please understand my point, that we got it started.
Mhm.
It's proved to be extremely valuable for our students. Extremely valuable. And I'm all for trying our very, very best to continue what we've already started.
Hmm.
And particularly, I would be advocating for looking at the budget for non-instructional items or nice to have items in the budget. They could be cut and have that money transferred over to support this very robust program.
Both are robust.
So I'm sorry, can we just, I'm confused because pre-COVID, Coastal was, a program that we had a half of an administrator, and we had a program where we spent a lot of time establishing the connections in the community for, I don't know if we call them internships
Yeah, internship
or, we
programs.
have programs, right? COVID, those programs basically went away. And because of COVID, they weren't available. And what we've done, my understanding is this past year or so, is to reestablish those connections so that we have those internships available again, and we've recreated those internships. So now we're kind of back to the program, which was very good pre-COVID, and I think that's where we are back to that same point. We just needed extra horsepower in the past year to get it back started again, because we lost it. That's my understanding. I don't, Jeff, I don't.
Correct, and we kept a 0.5 pathways piece to keep that robust connection going with like the governor's workforce council, so we can build upon that. I just didn't think, I'm gonna speak candidly, I didn't think it required a 1.0 at this point. Just not knowing what's gonna be out there for funding too. I'm just trying to be fiscally responsible with it as well, keep it going. But I do understand what you're saying. It's an important aspect. I agree 100%. We need to keep pushing it.
Also referencing the article, the letter that the faculty wrote, they basically outlined the need for the program. And I understand the funding issue. And my point also is that I tried to go through the budget to identify non-instructional and nice to have programs that were not being cut, where there was money that we could look very carefully at to transfer from non-instructional programs and nice to have programs into funding this very, very important program. That would be a request that I would make.
Candace?
I feel like I need a flag of
I
some
saw,
sort.
yeah, I was just trying to.
So I want to make sure that the wrong impression is not being put out. Okay, because Coastal Connections is not being cut. I am a huge supporter of this program and have been since the moment I came onto this board. And we have advocated for this program. We have supported this program 150%, and I continue to do so. So I want to ensure that the impression or the perception that's being put out is not that it's not supported, and that this decrease is going to, I don't believe it's going to affect this program at all. In fact, I've seen this program from the moment of 2012 do nothing but build and build and build and build and build and get better. And it is an outstanding program and resource. My impression of the interim position that is now being decreased was just that. It was interim. And this is something that is done on a regular basis in districts. This isn't, surprising to me. And again, I'm listening, and I don't want the impression to be that this outstanding, supported, incredible resource program that helps a tremendous amount of students is going to lose any type of steam. Yes, it would be wonderful to continue specifically with the person, okay, because that's what this is about. It's about personal versus really what needs to be done. So I just wanted to make that clear.
Thanks, Candace.
Thank you.
Again, just reference back to the faculty who have their boots on the ground, who are involved in the thing day by day, their description of what is happening to the program with this decision and funding.
Jill?
I hope I can clearly explain what I want to say. One of the things that we've always talked about in East Lyme school system, it's academically, it's more focused on the academics. I think what we're coming back to now, and correct me if I'm wrong, Gary, sometimes that doesn't get you to the point where you need to go in and work a job. And there are so many skills that you need to do, and I'm just thinking about what my experience was. I'm sorry to do that, but a third of the students in my high school went to what were called voc ed classes, voc educational. And to me, it appears that we're kind of backing down a little bit from that. And that's been and which Coastal Connections has started to fill, in my opinion, started to fill that hole or that deficit that we have. So I'm just thinking that, yes, we may not be able to figure it out this budget cycle, but I think we need to focus back on that, because I think there are a lot of students that we have or that will continue to have that are not going to go and get their undergraduate, get their master's, and then go for their PhD. I mean, as I said, that was a strong part of my high school education. I didn't do that. I was lucky enough, I went more of an academic focus. So I agree with Barry in that sense. I don't want that to get lost. I really, really don't want that to get lost, that we need to still continue to provide that for our students, because there are some out there. And I know what it's like. I mean, when I would hire a young 22-year-old that could barely handle counting money and let alone doing multiplication or whatever, to handle a cash drawer so you could balance at the end of the day. Those were nightmares, and I won't go there. But what I'm saying is, I just don't want that to get lost. I really don't. I think it's something that we could excel in, that maybe the other schools are not seeing as something that's important. For example, what Bill teaches. I think he probably teaches some incredible practical skills. I'm complimenting you, Bill. So anyway, I've said my piece. Thank you for listening, but I
have a question about this topic. When you talked about projected growth, what does it look like at the Coastal Connections? What does the growth look like? What have we seen over year in these programs?
I think last year, we did not add any new students. The internship programs were lost. So the coastal number has stayed pretty stagnant as we try to rebuild them this year. So I think we're finally to a point where we can start to begin growing the program a little bit more. It has been capped in the around the low to mid 20s most for where it's located right now in central office, because there's just not enough room.
So we're carrying additional interest beyond the group that's being searched.
Yep, there's continued back and forth discussions between high school and counselors with Abby Demars, who's running it right now, and the team as we look throughout the year as to
I'm
add
sorry,
more.
were you implying that there are kids who can't get into the program?
I wasn't implying that.
Oh, okay, because that's not where we are.
No, that's not where we're at.
No, and that's not where my question was coming from. I'm just trying to gauge sort of from when we talk about projections, I want to kind of look at the kind of more broadly in the district.
Thanks, Lisa. Jamie, and then Candace.
So I looked at the budget, I made notes on the budget. I guess I've seen the class sizes like this for a long time. When my son, my oldest, was at Niantic Center, he was in a class of 24, K through 4. And then he got to the middle school, he was part of that month that kind of let mellowed out and graduated. My daughter, she was in a low class at Niantic Center. My other daughter is now in a high class at Niantic Center in second grade. And I feel all of it. I feel the pain. It's hard, especially since these kids have had the worst elementary school experience. It's been terrible for them. I mean, I haven't even seen my daughter today. I'm hoping she had a great day without a mask on. I haven't even got to see her and I checked in with her yet today. It's hard to advocate for your child, and it's hard to advocate for everyone else's children when you have a child. So you have to kind of pull out mom and think with a taxpayer board of ed head. It's really, really hard sometimes. But that said, I'm so in favor of trying to keep these class sizes down. It's really, really tough. And with the kids, all the emotional stuff that they've had and all the social emotional slowdown in learning and all the learning that they've had to struggle with, lacking with COVID. And it's just, and the teachers are struggling to help the kids and they don't know how to help them because this is something that we've never dealt with before. None of us have ever dealt with a pandemic in the school and trying to maintain education and mental health. It's hard for all of us. And I want to see these classes stay as low as we possibly can keep them. And equitable. I don't want to see schools with 12 and then schools with 24. And I know that's hard. And I've been there. We've been there for a long, we were there a long time when I was first on the board. We had a lot of schools with 10, 15, and then we had schools with 24. And it was hard to try to figure out how to balance that. My next comment is going to be, I'm glad we have these art money in here and the ESSER funds in here, because tonight would be really, really hard if we had to try to figure out this budget without it.
Yep.
And I'm scared for next year because it's only going to be the same, but it's going to be without the ARP and ESSER funds. Unless some miracle occurs and the federal government decides to give us money again, which I doubt. I have a hard time cutting anything that's in the budget currently to add anything new. I have a hard time cutting the budget to get rid of anything we put in there because we worked really hard to put it in there in the first place. Class sizes, services, mental health, social emotional needs. I think that we've done our due diligence in everything that we put in there. I think we've worked really hard to try to grow. And I just would like to see us continue to do what's best for our kids and trying to do what's best for our taxpayers at the same time.
Thanks, Jamie. Candace and then Elisa.
Thanks. Well said, Jamie. So I just want to give Elisa a little bit more because I felt like you needed more of an answer. So for Coastal Connection,
I love the history that you brought.
right? I try to create a story. What was it that said that I always tell a story? Right? Oh, yeah. So with Coastal Connections, that is an incredible program that can grow. And we have a lot of incredible attributes here in town that need to be advertised. They need to be marketed. They need to be put out so that people know what we have to offer. Coastal, I think the way that it started, possibly, maybe it was renamed right around the time I was coming in, is targeted for kids that can really thrive, but maybe not in a larger school environment. Okay, is that fair? I think that's so fair.
It's a different model.
It is.
Project-based
And it is
model, but
an
yeah.
amazing model.
Yeah.
And no other
It's
program, no other program in surrounding districts touch it. It's that outstanding. So it can be marketed and it can thrive even more. It is a tuition-based program.
Okay, yeah, for everybody out of district.
So thank you.
Yep.
So that money can come in, right? And it basically evens out and pays for itself. And I remember having this conversation back when Eric first came on the board, and at times through the years, this program has been looked at to be cut. And we have gone, almost dying on the hill for it, okay? It can really grow even more. The Pathways is new, and it is really going to hit the ground running for a lot of the same things that Jill just spoke to, okay? It has a focus that people have not been focusing on for a very, very long time. So it can grow and get even bigger. It just has to be advertised. The work needs to be put in. But it really, I was compelled to speak to it so that people didn't get the wrong impression that this board is sitting here cutting an incredible program that's here in this district, because that is not the case. It just simply isn't. But the growth potential is very much there, and it has grown tremendously over the past 6 years, 5-6 years, fair. And I foresee that it will continue to. That's all I wanted to add.
Thank you. That's great.
I actually am really glad that this conversation came up during this meeting setting. Not from the standpoint of any cuts to the program, but because that it is a priority that needs to be continued to be focused on. So I think that, we've heard some of those points here today, and not necessarily, but budget related or pulling any parts out of it, but bringing some more visibility to a great program. And I think you make a good point about the marketing, pushing the visibility out even further. I think there's a lot of people that don't know. But that was, my comment was a couple other things, if I may. So I wanted to thank all the parents that we heard from. Some of you read the letters that I also appreciate kind of bringing them to have some visibility into the public forum. And, I read each of them in the email, but hearing from you directly was, it resonated with me, I think, at a more personal level. The first time I came to this board, I think, was 2009, because of cuts that were being imposed at Lily B. Haynes. So I, definitely resonate with advocating for the needs of our kids. And I thought that your voices were well articulated, and you especially kind of bringing out the challenges with balance. I also am hearing, without kind of having the up close and personal history, that this has been a recurring theme with the addressing of class sizes. I did see it with my kids as well, so I had a different personal lens into it, but we are grappling with this. It sounds like in a continued year-over-year conversation. I think that it's ideal, I think, to have all of the information that we need in terms of what numbers we're going to see. But I think it's also realistic that we have to have some kind of foresight into the the expected growth. And so, it sounds like they're really, we've seen the growth. There's sort of real data that is showing us that it's moving in that direction too. So, I think that I think all this data is really helpful, but I think there's that sort of gray space that we need to be considering as well.
Thanks, Lisa. Harry, did you have?
One last comment.
Yep.
I could say this another way. An issue here is $200,000. We spent $200,000. We can maintain the new dimensions of coastal that we've set in place. And a very important dimension of that is the apprenticeships that have been started out in the community. As I've looked through the budget, I try to look through, I mean, we only really have access to the kind of global function object codes. I can't get down into the granular issues, but looking at those, it is hard for me to believe that there is not $200,000 in non-instructional costs. There's not $200,000 in nice to have but not necessary costs in there. It could not be transferred to support these two very important things. We transferred $200,000 so we can keep the Coastal Connection program at its full level of operation that it is right now. And with all the positive benefits with the apprenticeship programs and things that I don't think, according to the faculty letter, would not be supported if we cut these positions. It's as simply as I can say it.
Do you have a suggestion?
Do you have a suggestion
Mhm.
for non-instructional programs?
Mhm.
I have many suggestions for non-instructional programs, so I'm not going to bring them up.
Okay, so then we don't know what to cut without bringing them up.
I think that the administration has a better perspective on all the cuts in there. I have a very global perspective on what is in that budget. And I think that if I had time to look at the granular aspect of the budget, I probably could identify some specific issues. I'll come up with some general, and now I'm just going to get into a point, well, yeah, that's not a good program. That's not a good program. I'm not going to do that in this meeting.
It's tricky, Barry. I know you bring up a good point. We've scoured, the budget since January 10th. We presented and before. I'll just use the example of our our program here on the sound that we
Project
Project Oceanal. I mean, we had brought that up a couple of years ago, $46,000, to cut, and people went nuts. You'd have a line, so whatever it is that we bring forward, we're gonna have a line out the door because there's a group of people that are angry. So this is hard. This is where the battle back and forth with what can go, what can stay. And I totally get where you're coming from. We have reduced instructional supplies. We have to give our teachers what they need, in their classrooms. I mean, Mariana, Annalise, Kim, principals, we've scoured this. I don't know anything else that's can be reduced or should be reduced. That's not going to have an impact on our staff.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Sure, Candace and then Bill.
Thank you, Eric. So the budget process started again when, Jeff?
Yeah,
just
I mean,
want- I
we
wanna
started
note
putting
it
together
publicly.
even October.
November.
Even, October, November is when the
Okay.
principals had to submit their
And we
building
had
based
our
budgets.
workshop October, November, December, January, and we are in February. That's a long time that we have deliberated and negotiated and gone through this. So I will be honest with you, I fully support the question that Jamie just asked. If there is a suggestion that is malleable, that is worthy, please, anyone, bring it forward, because we've been going through the process for a long time. And I can honestly say, even though I'm not allowed to speak for other people, I'm just not allowed. I can safely say that people truly do care about the budget here. Do want to do and try with every effort to do the right thing on the students and the teachers and every person that is underneath the district umbrella every single year. That I can say confidently. Okay. There was one more thing and it escaped me because I wanted to say that. Oh gosh, it's gonna come to me, I think. I knew it will. Oh Lord. If it comes back to me, I'll go
Yeah,
back to Bill. It was another
Bill,
thing.
and then if maybe Candace.
No, I just, in my time on the board and, being the spouse of an employee here, I can't say that I've witnessed any nice to have extras in our budget. I don't think that though, I think we run pretty lean here, and I have not seen areas that I think, whenever I've gone poking around, I seem to find that it's either not there, or I found out that it was not what I thought I was looking at. And, so I don't, again, if maybe I'm not looking with the right eye, but I feel like I haven't been sitting here for years and years saying, wow, we're sitting on a pile of rainy day here, because it seems like it's always rainy day. That's my impression, anyway.
Thanks, Bill. Candace?
All right, so it came back to me, and it was really a question because, again, I don't want the perception to be different than truly what it is. So apprenticeships were just stated, and the impression that some may have by what was stated is that they're going to dissipate, and that's not going to happen. So to my knowledge, that is certainly absolutely nothing that is going to happen. Apprenticeships, as we know it, as of right now, should not change. That's to my knowledge, which means students that are participating in Coastal Connections, that are participating in these hands-on activities in our apprenticeship type atmospheres are not going to end. Is that accurate?
Correct.
Okay, I just want to be clear.
They
and
should continue to
public on it, because that is not
As well as here at the high school.
right. The pathways is not going to end. These opportunities for students to learn or to achieve a certain degree or an end, and it might not be college minded, it might be something else, have only just begun. They will continue in the district.
Yes.
Thank you.
Other thoughts? Hey, for Laura, just want to give you guys one more shot.
I am impressed with the breadth of the conversation. I think East Lyme has always done a good job for students who come from all different styles of learning. And I think that has guided us in setting priorities so that we can meet the needs of all our students. And I think Coastal Connections is one way that we do that, but we also have to keep in mind that we have students with lots of different needs and interests and growth potentials also.
Great, thanks, Laura.
I'm good, thanks.
Great, thanks, Steve. So maybe I'll make a comment and then we'll see if anyone wants to make a motion or, as I look at it. So, I think the administration, Jeff, his team and the Board of Ed have worked hard over the past, 3 to 5 months to come up with this budget, which I think is a very good budget for the district. We had to make a lot of tough decisions, right? You add everything up, and I don't have this slide in front of me, but it was 9-point-something%. And we brought it down to 4.6%. That's a lot of tough decisions. I can't even read. That was $1.9 million that we had to find to get to the 4.6, which is, what we think is a good budget for the district. It's doing what we think is going to progress the district. And I think this is a budget that I think we should be comfortable to bring to the Board of Selectmen, bring to the Board of Ed and to our town to approve. And, that's what we're looking for. And I think it was a lot of hard work and a lot that went into getting to this point. So thanks to Jeff and the team and the Board of Ed to get to this point. Does anyone want to make a motion? Amy?
I would. I would like to move to adopt the superintendent's proposed 2022-2023 Eastline Public School budget in the amount of $54,608,478, which is a 4.59% increase over the current year's budget.
Oh, second.
And a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Can I get just
Yeah,
hands,
and-
just so I can,
And
and that's
hold on,
for
I gotta
Zoom
do
too.
good, yeah, let me,
this just makes it
Hold
my
on.
count easier because Zoom is hard for me.
Hold my hand.
okay, so all those in favor, raise your hand. So, yeah.
Thank you.
All those opposed? And abstain. Jill and Kate.
Thank you. So
Okay,
it's 7-1-2.
7-1-2, motion passes. Thanks, everyone. So we do have the agenda topic. Just about next steps, yeah. So we have budget presentation of the Board of Selectmen on Wednesday.
Oh, Wednesday evening. Yeah.
Wednesday evening.
Board of Selectmen,
second.
Wednesday evening. Yep, 6 o'clock,
Do we have a Board of Finance date?
March 21st.
March 21st. Okay, so those are the next.
24 to the Board of Finance, you said?
The Board of Selectmen, Wednesday night, the second,
Second,
and Board of
That's-
Finance
uh,
at 6 o'clock, Wednesday night, this coming Wednesday night, and then March 21st.
March 21st. Board of Finance. Does anyone want to make a motion to adjourn?
I would like to make a motion to adjourn.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? You're adjourned. Thank you.